Yes, welcome back to annoying stuff that you're probably going to wind up doing just a few times and not really find that annoying, and don't need as much advice on this as you technically... No, well, there's no real reason to do anything the wrong way the first time, just for fun. You might as well do it the better way, the less annoying way. This is a multimeter. Ta-da! If you don't have one of these, then well, you can wire something up to test connectivity with like a flash, a little lamp or an LED or something like that. Oh, no, those are right diodes. Yeah, okay, cool. It's an LED or something to test the connections. You just want to make sure that things are connecting and other things are not connecting. But what you're not going to be able to test is the solder joints. So if you're not positive that you're making good solder joints, this is a good thing to have. You could probably borrow one from someone. You know, go on Craigslist, want to borrow a multimeter for a day. I don't know, multimeter renting services probably exist. Everyone's all up in arms about multimeters. It's just all the news talks about constantly. So, I just couldn't possibly imagine. Anyways, I've set it for connection madoodle, which is just whether or not it's connected. Anything that conducts and has no resistance across it, or very low resistance across it. Here's a resistor. This is not connecting, but if I go across the resistor, and here it says, you can see that the display changes to shirt to indicate that, much like a shirt, it is very conductive. Watch. See? Shirt. What you want to do is make sure that your rows are connected and your columns are connected all the way down. The rows, or the columns, if you use the method I've described in the last video, which I made several seconds ago, you will not really have this problem because the core of the wire goes all the way down. What might be more helpful is to do a switch test across it, but to be quite honest, I've never really had much of an issue with switches going bad. Never really, actually. And part of that is it's not a huge deal once you get stuff hand-wired and in place to swap out a switch. You would just desolder these 2 points and then push down, and that switch will pop out. Pop the next switch in, tin both sides, and you're good to go. But you still want to make sure that you're not shorting. So this row needs to connect, and it does. But the question is whether or not this column needs to connect, and it does. The question is whether or not this column is actually contacting this row, because that's bad. We only want that to happen when this key gets pressed. Before it gets pressed, we want them to not be connected. So we can test that by doing one on the row and one on the column and see that they're not connected. However, this is why I grow an extra hand. If we were to, por ejemplo, short across the switch to simulate it being pressed, then it still doesn't work. Remember that, because there's a diode here. So, remember that. But what we're checking is whether or not this row is actually contacting this column. And what you'll do when you test it, and make sure that you're testing above the diode. You want to be testing up here, not down here, because that's past the diode, and it's not even going to register that it's connected, because there's a diode between the two. So, touching the top, what you'll do is you'll touch one row, and then you'll go column, 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 column. And if you get a short when you touch a column, then you know that there's a contact point here that you need to fix or reinforce or hot glue or whatever. But what is more valuable for checking the rows is to touch to one side and touch to the other. Because that shows that you're getting good solder connections all the way down here. And that's what's important. You want to make sure that you've got a good solder joint all the way across. If you don't check this at this point, and you put it in the case, and you get everything all nice and pretty, and you start typing on it, and you realize that a bunch of keys don't work, then you take it apart and start troubleshooting, and it gets super annoying. Highly recommend testing as you go. Set things up, and then while everything's apart, test, 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 and then move forward. So I think that's all you need for how to get this stuff going. So it's testing, it's rows, it's columns. Yep. I'll just do some more. See how far I can get in an hour or so. And you're not going to watch this because there's a lot of cursing involved. No, I'm just kidding. It's just tedious. It's just tedious work. But it is work. And work needs to be done.